So let's dive into what I call the 2M series. And so that's market and mindset. And again, for those that don't know me, I'll do a quick introduction. Catherine Summerall, Real Estate with Catherine, Keller Williams Realty. I have been one of the top producing agents in our Durango marketplace now for 7 years. It's been a big blessing in my life. And also the biggest thing is just being able to serve people through real estate. And I've been, I've had the opportunity to serve over 130 families. And this series, 2M, was brought to you by an initiative that I felt to answer the question of what's happening with COVID-19 in the Durango market in more of a platform which I could reach more people, because I was getting this question quite often. So I trust that this would be of value to you as we engage in the content. The first quarter statistics here, these recently came out. I just wanted to highlight a couple of these categories for you. This was first quarter statistics from Durango Association of Realtors. The number of homes sold in La Plata County was up 10% over 2019. It's a really strong indicator there. Number of homes sold in town Durango was up 25%. Number of homes sold Durango and townhome and condo market was down almost 12%. So that's a little bit of an interesting statistic there. Number of homes sold in Bayfield rural was up 10% over 2019. And the number of homes sold in Bayfield in town was up 33%. So let's look, we've been tracking weekly numbers. So what's happening on a weekly basis in various segments of our market. The Durango new listings category, interesting to see how, so this 2019 is in the blue, 2020 is in the red. Interesting to see how in general, but week by week, it also, it tracked the same pattern. So this last week, last rolling 7 days that I've been tracking, we've seen an uptick of new listings. In general, we're still down from total listings or week by week of 2019. Pendings, again, you start to see somewhat of the same trajectory every week. We did see the pendings did decrease here this last week relative to the week prior. That same trend was happening there in 2019. Pretty big differential there though, however, proportionally speaking. We're a smaller marketplace in something compared to something like Denver or some of these metropolitans. So when we see a decrease between something like 15 to this is only really about a 10 number differential here, but proportionally speaking, those you start to see more difference proportions. Hope that makes sense. Durango sold inventory. We started, we were tracking more in line with 2019. You didn't see as much variable there. Still, getting a lot closer to bridging this gap on the sold portion of our marketplace. So let's dive into new listings in town. Again, this past week, we were pretty close to what the previous week in 2019 looked like. We still started to see some variables here between inventories in 2018 versus 2018 for the in-town Durango market. Pendings started to have a little bit of the same trajectory, and then maybe we've had some adverse trajectory relative to what was happening in 2018. Again, I think that this is good perspective from the standpoint of having a basis to compare to 2018 versus 2020 versus the now, because everything, real estate statistics, every aspect of, in my opinion, every aspect of life is about perspective. So again, I think that this is good perspective as we look to qualify and evaluate what's happening in our marketplace today. Durango in town sold, we actually looked to surpass the sold activity this past week over 2019. So that's pretty interesting. and start, seeing again a sold activity is the response of previous pendings. Typical escrow period is 30 to 45 days or so on average. So let's look at the Durango rural market. This seemed to, again, as we look at what this starts to trend over time here, the Durango rural market pretty much has been operating opposite of 2019. We had stronger listing count. We started to see that drop down a little bit. And then we saw this, new listings have a little bit of an uptick this last week. Durango rural pendings are certainly down, and we'll see that in some of these next couple of slides. So in the Durango rural market, pendings are down, the number of homes that are selling every day. And again, this is a weekly basis report, so every week. Durango rural sold. Interesting, not a big differential there. We start to see a general tracking generally speaking of this 2019 trend. Again, started off 2020, we've seen, we beat sold inventory by, proportionally speaking, a good proportion there as we started this tracking process or COVID-19 type timeframe in mid-March. So that's a weekly kind of tracking, visual tracking as far as what's happening. And then let's look at what the totals are doing. So again, I thought that this is really insightful perspectives when we look at over time. So this period, so let me walk you through what how this graph works is, it's the Durango, total Durango market from March 12th to April 29th. And then we have the same time frame from 2018, 19, and 20. So 3 years worth of data. 2018 is in the blue, 2019 is in this pink color, and then 2020 is in the yellow. So new listings, you can see that we are down. We have 107 new listings during this time frame in comparison to last year, which is 167, and the year prior, which is 139. That was 2018. As I mentioned earlier, across these various metrics that we're looking at, we're seeing pending activity down significantly. You can visually really see that here. In 2018, we had 125 pendings for this time frame. 2019 was pretty much comparable, like the exact number by one. And then 2020, we're down over 50% in pending. So what does that mean for you, both on the buyer and the seller side? As a seller and you're looking to sell, how can you leverage the lack of inventory potentially available in your segment, and then B, also make sure that you become one of half of the statistic that is typically selling or going under contract. So what do you need to do to position yourself to where you're certainly one of this 153 homes that have pended? On the buyer side, what type of opportunity does that exist to create for you and your situation specifically? With mortgage, which we're going to have a really awesome conversation next Tuesday about an update on the mortgage industry. What opportunities exist with you both in the mortgage world, so the cost of money, the availability of credit for you as a buyer, and then how does that also translate to the inventory real estate and what could be available for you? And then the sold activity, again, we're not too far off here on sold notions. This will be interesting as we look at continuing this tracking over time. I've said that before. These first quarter statistics are not really truly reflective of the lasting effects of COVID and the economic impact that we're seeing. So, second quarter statistics in these figures will be really, I think, key indicators. Okay. Bayfield total market. So Bayfield's proven to be very strong. I mean, you start to see, you know, numbers that are even beating out previous years. So new inventory, certainly on par with years past. Pendings, there's more activity in Bayfield right now. You know, that's a reflection of likely price point. It's much more affordable housing there in that market and a more abundance of that. And then, you know, again, with mortgage rates being as competitive as they are, you know, there's a certain demographic of buyer that really that's really influential for. And so I think, you know, we're starting to, you know, Bayfield is really proving to continue to uptick in these statistical analysis. Sold activity, same thing. So 2018, 2019, and 2020, you know, it's proving to be very strong right now. So the Durango in town, let's look at that. 2018 again in the blue, 2019 in the red, and then 2020 in the yellow. We're starting, you know, outside of pending, you know, new inventory and sold inventory, we're trending more in alignment with 2018 numbers in the in-town Durango market. You can see 2019, you know, we certainly had more listings, we had more pendings and relative pendings to 2018, but certainly more solds than the couple in 2018. Looking at this year, you see that we're trending just more in alignment with that type of activity. We have 45 new listings in 2020 for this time frame in town Durango. Pending activity has been 29 homes, and then we've sold 33. So one of the things that we're also going to start talking about here is months of supply and absorption rates. So months of supply is essentially how many, if no other homes were to go on the market, based upon the frequency of how many homes either penned or sell, how many months of inventory do we have available? And that starts to give you the indicators of the terminology buyer's market and seller's market. We'll dive into that more, you know, next week. But looking at the in-town months of supply, we are in overarching, you know, with overarching principle here of just the in-town, not price specific. We are in a seller's market. We have about 2.5 months of supply. A balanced market is roughly about 5 months of supply. But, you know, as a seller, how does that impact you if you're considering purchasing or selling your home and you have an in-town product? I, you know, certainly encourage you to connect with your realtor, your real estate partner, and talk about how these statistics, how this environment can best support your goals, because I do believe there's opportunity in real estate, certainly continuing to move as we see in these graphs. They are down, yet that doesn't mean that we're in a negative market by any means, or a depreciating market. It's you know, representation, presentation, all those things become really important. Certainly who you partner with becomes really important as you look to become one of what, in this example, the 29 homes that penned in this time frame. Durango rural, you know, big differential here. We've talked, this is consistent across the board, that pending inventory is down, so the number of homes selling is down. You really see that visually here. Still down a little bit in new listings relative to the last several years. In our sold market for Durango rural product is on par, if not a little bit, excuse me, above 2019 and 18. Okay, so weekly numbers, we saw 16 new listings in the Durango real estate market. So that's Durango rural, Durango in town, and the resort market. So we saw 16 totals. We had 6 penned and 12 sold. So we might have started to see this kind of decline. Maybe we're towards the, you know, the flattening out of that pending activity. I would tend to be a little bit more optimistic based upon interest rates and things that are supporting the buyers in the market right now, and that we'll continue to see that can say consistent, if not uptick. And it's also relative to the quality inventory that's available too. So it's great to see that these new listings here, which is in the blue, it's starting to increase, because listings is the key fluidity piece of a marketplace. Bayfield real estate market, 5 new listings, 7 pended and 4 sold this past week. So again, going back to Bayfield, if you have if you're a buyer in the Bayfield market, talk with your agent. Things may be moving a little bit more quickly than what you might expect. And then, if you are a potential seller in that Bayfield market, what does that really mean for you? What does pricing look like for your home? What are expectations? All those conversations will be really key as you evaluate what is the best decision for you. But both, in my opinion, pretty strong indicators for the marketplace we're in today. Durango in town, we saw out of the total Durango new listings, we had 7 in-town listings, 2 pended in town, and 8 sold. Durango rural, we had 7 new listings, 4 pendings, and 3 sold. Bayfield, we saw 1 new listing in town, 2 had pended, and 2 sold. Bayfield rural market, we saw 4 new listings, 5 pendings, so 4 came on, 5 came off. That's really strong, very also consistent to last week. So Bayfield rural market is moving. Now determine certainly what price point you're in, whether on the selling side or the buying side. The specific pricing segment could look a little different. And then 2 sold. And I do start to get into the pricing, so segments. If you're interested in that type of information and continuing deeper into pricing segments, please let me know, either comment. I will, on the recording of this, I will link the sign up form for this type of reporting so that you can review that at your leisure. I trust this was of value. The last thing that I want to get into real quick on the second part of the 2M series is the mindset piece. So I'm just going to pop over to Facebook, make sure we don't have any real estate questions. Again, if you have specific questions that you maybe not comfortable voicing publicly, please let me know. I'm happy to speak to that. If you would like this reporting, it's happening every week. It's a rolling 7-day, rolling weekly reporting as far as new listings, pending listings, and sold. That data is just really, really important as you look to evaluate what your personal real estate decisions will be here this year. And I'm happy to email that to you every week. So let's dive real quick into, we've been going over shift. It is a business book. So this, you're talking about the tactics needed as a business owner to shift in a shifting marketplace. So tactic 5 is getting to the table, and it's talking about lead conversion. And there's just a couple things that I wanted to just share with you out of this. One of the quotes that I thought was really poignant for me: most people don't, or most people never run far enough on their first wind to find that they've got a second. So interesting. This whole chapter was about the notion that to get the same results in a shifting market, we're going to have to dramatically increase the efforts of our lead generation, and the notion of converting those leads into qualified business is going to become really, really important. It always has been, but it's going to be magnified. But we might be doing, double, triple the work for the same result, unless we can look to increase our conversion. So keep on, just keep pressing one foot in front of the other. Those in general, those that, those that don't ever fail. Well, essentially, if you, those that don't ever quit, fail. never fails. So just keep going. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep going, and you will see success. So the process of lead conversion, so you've first got to capture, you've got to connect, and then you have to close. And so what does that look like? What does that capture of your sales funnel look like? What does the connect notion look like? I mean, really, that's where you're adding value. You're learning who your consumer is. You're learning what their needs are, and you're looking to add value to their world. It goes back, the connection piece goes back to what are the the who, what, when, why, where, and how. Who is your customer? What do they need, or what do they want? Where do they want it, or where do they need it? Why do they want that, or why do they need that? When do they need that or want it? And then how do they plan to do it? So if you can understand those general questions, then you can understand how you're going to add value to them as a service provider or retail. Maybe you're providing some type of product, but those are key questions. And then you have to close. I mean, and closing may have a negative concept or negative mindset for some people, but closing is really just the exchange of value. So the word close means comes to an end, and that you're bringing something to conclusion. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're concluding the discussion and seeing if there's a new one that can take place. So as people come into your pipeline, you're connecting with them, you're adding value to their world. And then what is the next conversation that needs to happen relative to the goods or services that you provide? And that's the close portion. So really great stuff. Those were just a couple of my highlights. Again, Catherine with Real Estate with Catherine, if you made it this far in this video, I sure appreciate you. I hope this was of value to you. And yeah, if you have any questions, reach out. I'm here for you guys. Real Estate with Catherine at Keller Williams. Have an awesome Friday. So next week, just to wrap up a couple things that are coming down the line. Today, Join the Conversation series, we have Linda Wilderman coming on and to talk about the values of physical health. She's a head coach there at CrossFit Catacombs here in town. And then next week, we have Andy Roach coming to speak with us. He is a mortgage lender, mortgage broker at Highlands Mortgage. So that's going to be really good too. A lot of insight on that call as to what's happening in the mortgage world respective to COVID. So you guys have an awesome Friday. Thanks so much, and take care.